The courtroom had the kind of quiet that came from confidence, not respect. Everyone believed they already knew how this would end. The case had been labeled open and shut by local news weeks earlier. The defendant sat stiffly at the defense table, his jaw clenched, eyes forward, a man already resigned to being judged. Across from him, the prosecution's exhibits were neatly stacked, photographs, reports, sealed evidence bags, laid out like trophies. Beside the prosecutor's table sat the real star of the case. A German shepherd, large and impeccably groomed, rested in a perfect sit at his handler's side. His black and tan coat caught the overhead lights, his posture straight, his discipline unmistakable. This was Rex, K-9 unit, 5 years of service, flawless record. He had tracked the suspect through rain, asphalt, and chaos. He had located the weapon in under 7 minutes. He had identified the scent with unwavering certainty. Rex didn't bark, he didn't fidget, he didn't need to. His presence alone had already convinced half the jury. The handler, Officer Daniel Harper, kept one hand loosely on the leash. He had testified dozens of times before, always with the same result. Jurors trusted dogs more than people. Dogs didn't lie. Dogs didn't take bribes. Dogs didn't get confused. That belief was the backbone of this case. The judge adjusted his glasses, scanning his notes. "Before we proceed to closing arguments," he said calmly, "the court recognizes one final witness." A murmur rippled through the benches. Everyone assumed it was procedural, nothing dramatic, nothing that would change the outcome. In the back row, a woman shifted uncomfortably, tightening her grip on a small boy seated beside her. The child's feet dangled several inches above the floor, sneakers swinging slowly, rhythmically, like he was bored in a place not meant for him. His name was Noah. He was 3 years old. Noah didn't understand words like defendant or evidence. He didn't know what a trial was. He only knew his mother's hand felt tense and the room smelled strange, like old paper, nervous sweat, and something else he couldn't name. And then there was the dog. Noah's eyes had been locked on Rex since they entered. Unlike the adults, Noah wasn't impressed. He wasn't intimidated. He wasn't reassured. He was confused. Rex stared straight ahead, trained eyes neutral, but the moment Noah leaned forward, something subtle changed. The dog's ears twitched, just once, barely noticeable, a reflex most people missed. Noah tilted his head. The boy's lips parted. His voice, small, clear, unafraid, slipped into the silence. "You're not smelling the same man." The words were quiet, almost gentle. But Rex heard them. The German shepherd's ears snapped fully upright. His body stiffened, muscles tightening like coiled wire. His breathing shifted, slow, deliberate, wrong. Officer Harper felt it instantly through the leash. His hand tightened. That wasn't normal. The judge paused mid-sentence, sensing the shift in the room. "Is there a disruption?" he asked. No one answered. Rex's gaze moved, not to the defendant, but toward the back of the courtroom. Toward Noah. A low sound escaped the dog's throat, not a bark, not a growl. A whine. The handler's heart dropped into his stomach. Rex never whined on duty. Jurors leaned forward in their seats. One of them glanced nervously at another, eyebrows raised. The prosecutor frowned, annoyance flickering across his face. "Officer," the judge said sharply, "control your dog." "I'm trying, Your Honor," Harper replied, though his voice betrayed him. Noah's mother froze. Her breath caught as she felt her son lean away from her grip. She hadn't taught him those words. She hadn't told him anything about the case. She hadn't even wanted him there, but there was no one else to watch him that day. Noah stood on the bench, wobbling slightly, his small hands gripping the polished wood. He looked directly at Rex. "You remember," Noah said softly, "that night smelled different." Rex's tail dropped. The courtroom went completely still. Even the air seemed to stop moving. The judge slowly lowered his pen. "Who said that?" he asked. Noah raised his hand, not confidently, not proudly, but the way children do when they know something important and don't understand why adults haven't noticed it yet. Officer Harper swallowed hard. In 5 years, Rex had only reacted like this twice. Both times the trail had been wrong. The judge leaned forward now, curiosity overtaking irritation. "Ma'am," he said, looking toward Noah's mother, "is your child speaking to the dog?" She shook her head, panic spreading across her face. I don't know why he's saying this," she whispered. He does that sometimes." Noah frowned, sensing the tension. He pointed not accusingly, not dramatically, but matter-of-factly. "That man," he said, indicating the defendant, "doesn't smell like the bad man." Gasps echoed off the courtroom walls. The defense attorney shot to his feet. "Objection, this is highly inappropriate." The judge raised a hand. Rex let out another low whine, his eyes never leaving the child. Officer Harper felt sweat bead along his spine. Something was wrong. And for the first time since the trial began, certainty cracked. Not loudly, not violently, but enough to let doubt slip through. The objection hung in the air, sharp and loud, but it didn't land the way the defense attorney expected. Normally, a judge would shut something like this down instantly. A toddler speaking in a criminal trial wasn't just inappropriate, it was unthinkable. But the judge didn't bring the gavel down. He was watching the dog. Rex had shifted his weight now, nails clicking softly against the courtroom floor. His posture was no longer textbook perfect. His head was angled slightly, ears forward, eyes locked not on the defendant, but on Noah. The leash trembled faintly in Officer Harper's grip, vibrating with restrained tension. "Officer Harper," the judge said slowly, "is your K9 reacting to the child?" Harper hesitated. Every instinct told him to answer carefully. Every ounce of training warned him against anthropomorphizing a dog in open court, but Rex wasn't giving him the luxury of denial. "Yes, Your Honor," Harper said finally, "he is." The prosecutor scoffed. "With respect, this is ridiculous. Dogs react to movement, to noise, children especially. This means nothing." Rex chose that moment to do something he had never done in a courtroom before. He turned his head away from the defendant. It was subtle, almost polite, but to a trained handler it was deafening. The jury noticed. A woman in the front row juror box leaned toward her neighbor and whispered, "Is he ignoring him?" The defendant felt it too. His shoulders stiffened. His confident stare faltered as he glanced sideways at the dog that had supposedly sealed his fate. Rex didn't look back. Instead, the German shepherd stood up. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. "Rex," Harper whispered, issuing a quiet command, "sit." The dog didn't comply. That had never happened before. The judge's jaw tightened. "Officer," he said, voice firm but controlled, "why is your dog disobeying?" Harper swallowed. "Because, Your Honor, something's conflicting." "Conflicting with what?" "With his scent memory." The prosecutor slammed his hand on the table. "Objection, speculation." "Sustained," the judge said automatically, but his eyes never left Rex. "Officer, explain." Harper took a breath. He could feel every eye in the room on him now. This wasn't how testimony was supposed to go. This wasn't how any of this worked. "K9s identify suspects based on scent consistency," he said carefully. "When Rex tracks a person, he locks onto a specific scent profile. It's not just one smell, it's a combination. Skin oils, stress hormones, environment." He paused. "If that scent changes significantly, Rex reacts." The judge glanced toward Noah, who was still standing on the bench, utterly unaware that he had just derailed a murder trial. "And you're saying," the judge pressed, "that this child's words triggered that reaction?" Harper nodded once. "Yes, sir." Noah's mother finally found her voice. "Your Honor, please, he's just a child. He doesn't even understand." Noah interrupted her. "The dog is sad," he said softly. Rex let out a quiet, broken-sounding whine, as if on cue. That did it. The judge raised his gavel, then stopped halfway down. He exhaled slowly, eyes scanning the room, jurors leaning forward, attorneys frozen, a defendant pale with uncertainty. "Order," the judge said quietly. "We will have order." But no one moved, no one spoke. The judge leaned forward in his chair. "Child," he said gently, abandoning formalities, "what is your name?" "Noah," he replied. "How old are you, Noah?" Noah held up 3 fingers proudly. A murmur rippled through the courtroom again. "And why," the judge asked, choosing his words carefully, "do you think the dog is sad?" Noah shrugged. "Because he knows," he said, but nobody listened. A chill crawled up more than one spine. The defense attorney stood slowly this time, voice measured. "Your Honor, I believe my client's right to a fair trial is being compromised by." The judge raised a hand, silencing him. "Sit down," he said, not unkindly, but not negotiable. The prosecutor's confidence was unraveling now. "This is turning into a circus," he snapped. "We are talking about a trained police dog and a toddler's imagination." Rex growled. Not loud, not aggressive. "Warning." Harper's grip tightened instantly. "Easy, boy," he murmured, heart pounding. Rex had never growled in court, ever. The judge's voice hardened. "Officer Harper, has your dog ever reacted like this during testimony?" "No, Your Honor." "Has he ever failed to identify a suspect correctly?" Harper hesitated. "Once," he admitted, 2 years ago." The courtroom leaned in. "And why?" Harper swallowed. "Because the scent sample had been compromised. We later discovered the suspect had been framed. Someone else had worn his jacket." The defendant's head snapped up. The jurors exchanged sharp looks. The judge's eyes narrowed. And how did Rex react then? "Almost exactly like this," Harper said quietly. Silence crashed down over the room. Noah climbed down from the bench and walked, unsteadily but determined, toward the aisle. His mother reached for him, panicked, but the bailiff hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. Noah stopped a few feet from Rex. "You smelled him," Noah said to the dog. "The real one." Rex's tail flicked once. The defendant's breathing grew shallow. Sweat dotted his forehead now. The judge stood. "I am calling for an immediate recess," he announced, voice firm but shaken. "This court will reconvene after a review of the K-9 evidence and handler testimony." The gavel came down. But even as people stood, whispered, argued, and rushed toward the doors, one truth had already taken root. The case was no longer certain. The evidence was no longer clean. And a 3-year-old, who was never meant to speak, had just forced everyone to question what they thought they knew. As officers escorted the defendant out, Rex finally sat, slowly, deliberately. His eyes followed Noah. And for the first time since the trial began, the dog looked relieved. The hallway outside the courtroom buzzed like a disturbed hive. Lawyers whispered urgently into phones. Deputies stood in clusters, confusion written across their faces. Reporters who had been waiting for routine closing arguments now sensed blood in the water. Inside a small conference room, Judge Harold Whitman sat alone, hands folded, staring at the wall. In 30 years on the bench, nothing like this had ever happened. A toddler, a police dog, and a case that was suddenly bleeding uncertainty. The door opened softly. Officer Daniel Harper stepped in, Rex walking tightly at his side. The dog's posture had changed, still disciplined but tense, alert in a way that suggested unfinished business. "Close the door," the judge said. Harper complied. Whitman turned slowly, I want the truth, officer, not testimony, not procedure, the truth. Harper nodded, yes, sir. Could your dog be wrong? Harper didn't answer immediately. He knelt beside Rex, resting a hand on the dog's neck. Rex has been wrong once, he said carefully, and it nearly destroyed an innocent man's life. Whitman's eyes sharpened. Tell me. 2 years ago, Harper explained, Rex had tracked a suspect accused of armed robbery. Everything lined up, scent, location, timeline. The jury was ready to convict. Then Rex began behaving strangely during a secondary lineup, distracted, unsettled. A rookie officer had brushed it off. Harper hadn't. Further investigation revealed the suspect's jacket had been planted. Someone else had worn it during the crime. Rex wasn't confused, he was conflicted. The scent was real, Harper said quietly, just not the right person. The judge exhaled slowly. Is that what's happening now? Whitman asked. Harper looked down at Rex. The dog's ears flicked as if he understood his name being spoken. I believe so, Your Honor. There was a knock at the door. The judge straightened. Enter. The prosecutor stepped in, face tight with frustration. This recess is a mistake, he said bluntly. We're undermining months of work because of. A child, the judge finished. The prosecutor scoffed. Because of a distraction. Rex growled softly. The prosecutor froze. Whitman raised an eyebrow. You were saying. The prosecutor swallowed, visibly shaken. Your Honor, with all due respect, dogs react to stimuli. Children say strange things. We can't let emotion derail justice. Justice, Whitman replied evenly, derails itself when we refuse to ask questions. Another knock. This time Noah's mother stepped inside, clutching her son tightly. Her eyes were red. Her hands trembled. I'm sorry, she said quickly. They said you wanted to see us. The judge softened instantly. Please sit. Noah squirmed until his feet hit the floor. The moment Rex noticed him, the dog's posture relaxed. His tail wagged once, slow, tentative. Harper's breath caught. That was new. Noah, the judge said gently, crouching to eye level, do you know why you're here? Noah shook his head. That's okay, Whitman said. I just want you to tell me something. Can you do that? Noah nodded. Why do you think the dog knows the bad man? Noah frowned, searching for words bigger than his age. Because dogs remember, he said finally. People forget. Silence filled the room. The prosecutor let out a sharp laugh. This is absurd. Noah looked at him unbothered. He was mad, the boy said. The real one. He smelled like rain and metal. Harper's head snapped up. Rain, metal. That hadn't been mentioned in any report. What night are you talking about, Noah? Harper asked carefully. The loud night, Noah said, when Mommy told me to hide. The room went cold. Noah's mother's face drained of color. Noah, she whispered, what are you saying? The man came, Noah continued, oblivious. He yelled. He dropped something shiny. The judge straightened slowly. Officer Harper, he said, voice tight, was a metal object dropped at the crime scene. Harper nodded. A knife, he said quietly, recovered in the alley. The prosecutor took a step back. That information was never public. Noah rocked slightly on his heels. The dog smelled him then, he said, but later it wasn't the same. Whitman closed his eyes briefly. This wasn't imagination. This was memory. Mrs. Collins, the judge said to Noah's mother, was your son present near the scene the night of the crime? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought he was asleep, I didn't think. You're not in trouble, Whitman said quickly, but this is important. The prosecutor shook his head. Even if this is true, it doesn't change the K-9 identification. Rex stood abruptly. He walked, not lunged, not rushed, but walked to the door. He stopped and looked back at Harper. Then he faced the hallway and barked, once sharp, demanding. Harper's heart slammed against his ribs. "He wants to track," he said, "right now." The judge stared at the dog, then at the adults who had built this case on certainty. "Bring me the original scent evidence," Whitman ordered, immediately. Minutes later, an evidence tech arrived with sealed containers. Rex was brought forward. The room held its breath as the dog sniffed the sample taken from the crime scene. Rex stiffened. Then, confused, unsettled, he stepped back. The prosecutor's face went pale. Harper whispered, almost to himself, "That's not it." Whitman stood tall, authority filling the room. "This court is reopening investigation," he said firmly, "effective immediately." The prosecutor protested. The defense attorney burst in, stunned. Deputies exchanged looks. And Noah, small, quiet Noah, sat on the floor beside Rex, gently resting his hand on the dog's back. "You found him before," Noah whispered. "You can do it again." Rex wagged his tail. Outside, reporters sensed chaos. Inside, the foundation of the case cracked wide open. Because the truth, long ignored, poorly hidden, was finally breathing. And it wasn't done yet. The courthouse no longer felt like a place of order. It felt like a place under interrogation. Phones rang nonstop. Doors opened and closed with sharp urgency. Deputies moved faster than they had all morning, no longer guided by routine but by something far more dangerous: uncertainty. Inside the evidence room, sealed boxes lined the steel shelves like silent witnesses. Judge Whitman stood with his hands clasped behind his back as technicians laid out the materials connected to the case: clothing fibers, photographs, DNA swabs, and the original scent sample that had guided Rex to the defendant. Officer Harper watched Rex carefully. The dog was alert now, focused, purposeful, but not calm. His nose hovered near the evidence, then pulled back slightly as if something offended him. "That's the sample?" Harper asked. The technician nodded. "Collected from the knife handle, bagged according to protocol." Rex sniffed again. Then he sneezed sharply and turned his head away. The room went quiet. "That's not rejection behavior," Harper said slowly. "That's confusion." The prosecutor, who had followed them inside against his better judgment, crossed his arms. "Or contamination from handling. Happens all the time." Harper shook his head. "Not like this." He crouched beside Rex. "Easy, boy." Rex whined softly, then did something unexpected. He moved past the knife, straight to a box no one had touched. A secondary evidence bag, one that had barely been referenced during trial. Inside it, a dark hooded jacket recovered blocks away from the crime scene, dismissed early because it didn't match the defendant's size. Rex pressed his nose to the plastic. His entire body went rigid. There was no hesitation, no conflict. Just certainty. Harper's pulse spiked. "That's it," he whispered. "That's the scent." The prosecutor laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "That jacket was ruled out months ago." Judge Whitman turned slowly. "Why?" "Didn't belong to the defendant," the prosecutor replied. "Didn't fit the narrative." Whitman's eyes hardened. Justice doesn't have a narrative, it has facts. Rex sat beside the jacket and stared at Harper. The signal was unmistakable. "Run it again," the judge ordered. "Full forensic sweep, DNA, fibers, everything." Within hours, the lab confirmed what Rex already knew. The jacket carried skin cells, male, not matching the defendant, and not matching anyone in the database. Yet, meanwhile, in a quiet room down the hall, Noah sat with a court-appointed child specialist. Crayons lay scattered across the table. Noah ignored them. Instead, he stacked small wooden blocks into a crooked tower. "Can you tell me about the night you were scared?" the specialist asked gently. Noah nodded without looking up. "The loud night." What made it loud? The man, Noah said. He yelled at Mommy. The specialist's pen paused. What did he say? Noah frowned, searching his memory. He said, you saw nothing. The specialist's chest tightened. And what did your mom do? She pushed me in the closet, Noah replied. She said don't come out. The specialist exchanged a glance with the officer behind the glass. Did the man have anything in his hands? She asked. Noah nodded. Shiny. He dropped it. It made a sound. Metal. Knife. None of this had been in the original witness statements, because no one had asked the child. Back in the courtroom, the defense attorney paced like a caged animal. His client sat motionless, hands trembling now, eyes darting to every door. This changes everything, the attorney whispered. They can't ignore this. The prosecutor stood stiffly, jaw clenched. It's circumstantial. But even he sounded unsure now. Judge Whitman reconvened court late that afternoon. The benches were packed, not with jurors this time, but with officers, legal staff, and a growing number of reporters. The court has reviewed new developments, Whitman announced. Based on emerging inconsistencies in scent evidence and newly discovered testimony, this trial is suspended pending further investigation. The defendant exhaled sharply, like a man surfacing from deep water. Gasps echoed. This is outrageous, the prosecutor protested. You're allowing a criminal to walk free. Whitman's gaze was ice cold. I'm allowing the truth to catch up. Rex lay calmly at Harper's feet now, his earlier tension gone, as if his job had only just begun. As officers escorted the defendant out, Noah watched from the back of the room. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just looked tired. His mother knelt beside him. You did nothing wrong, she whispered, tears streaking her face. Noah shook his head. The dog did, he said simply. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the courthouse steps. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. The story was already spreading. A child stops a trial, police dog questions evidence, case in chaos. But inside the building, something far more important was happening. A new suspect list was being drafted. Old alibis were being reopened. And the jacket, once ignored, was now the center of everything. Officer Harper clipped Rex's leash and leaned close. You ready, boy? Rex's ears perked. His tail wagged once. Somewhere out there, the real man was breathing freely still. But not for long. Because this time, the system wasn't just listening to evidence. It was listening to instinct. And instinct had a scent. One Rex would never forget. The courthouse had turned into a command center. Detectives rushed from room to room, whispering into radios, eyes darting to notebooks and digital pads. Every detail from the night of the crime, every overlooked surveillance clip, every secondary witness statement was being combed through like evidence itself might speak if only investigators listened closely enough. Officer Harper knelt beside Rex in a small holding room. The dog's posture was taut, rigid, yet purposeful. Harper could feel the animal's muscles humming beneath his hand. Every instinct in Harper's body screamed that the dog was about to lead them to the real perpetrator. Stay calm, boy, Harper murmured, pressing his palm against Rex's neck. Let's find him. The scent trail was delicate, faint, and old. It had been recorded at multiple points. The knife, the hooded jacket, and partial traces along an alley where surveillance cameras had caught only shadows. The defendant, once thought guilty, was now irrelevant. Harper could feel Rex calculating, measuring, triangulating the source of the scent. Noah, seated nearby on a folding chair, watched silently. He wasn't told what was happening. He didn't need instructions. He simply knew that the dog knew. Suddenly, Rex bolted. Harper leapt to his feet, leash in hand, nearly falling over the scattered papers on the floor. The dog headed toward the evidence storage exit, straining against the leash, barking sharply once as though issuing a command. Harper followed. The hallway was quiet, eerily so for a government building usually bustling with staff. Outside, a dark SUV waited. Officers cleared the path, curious and cautious. Harper opened the evidence trunk to reveal multiple bags of exhibits and the secondary hooded jacket. Rex went directly to the jacket again, sniffed, then looked toward the open street beyond the courthouse doors. It wasn't just the jacket. It was the smell of the man who had touched it, left a trace, gone unnoticed. Harper followed Rex through the courthouse steps, across the sun-dappled plaza, and into a nearby alley where faint traces had been logged on the map of the night's events. Noah tugged at his mother's sleeve. "That's him," he said softly. Harper froze, heart hammering. "What do you mean, kid?" "The man who made the noise. He dropped the shiny thing. He came back. He smells like the jacket." Harper's jaw tightened. He had trained dogs for years, but instinct didn't lie. And instinct was whispering now. The boy was right. Across the street, a man in a hood and dark jacket paused. He looked around nervously. His face wasn't visible, but Harper saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he shifted his weight. Rex lunged, barking furiously, pulling Harper toward the man. The suspect bolted down the alley. Officers shouted, drawing weapons, but Harper signaled for calm. Rex didn't chase recklessly. Every step was measured, precise, calculated. Noah's mother clutched him tightly. "He knows," she whispered. The man rounded a corner and froze. His chest heaved. He could hear the barking, the commands. Then, suddenly, he realized. He couldn't hide from the dog, couldn't hide from what Noah had inadvertently revealed, couldn't hide from instincts sharpened by years of training. Rex slowed, circling the man, growling, sniffing. Harper took a cautious step forward. "Stop, police." The man froze. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hands. Harper noticed his knuckles were scraped, and his jacket was torn at the shoulder, likely from the alley's debris. The officer motioned for backup. Within seconds, other units moved in, cornering the suspect. Harper could feel the adrenaline thrumming through his veins, but he also felt a strange calm. The dog had never been wrong before when it mattered. As they cuffed the man, Harper glanced at the jacket. The scent matched. Every trace, every nuance of metal, sweat, and fear confirmed it. Rex had identified him in a way evidence alone never could. Noah, still seated, whispered, "He's the one, Mommy. He's the bad man." His mother held him close, tears streaking down her face. "Yes, baby," she whispered. "You helped find him." The defendant from the original trial sat in the courthouse, flanked by his attorney, listening on a live feed. His face was pale, disbelief etched into every line. The weight that had once threatened to crush him had lifted. Justice, it seemed, had a different path this time, one that no one had anticipated. Detectives examined the suspect's belongings. In the jacket pocket, they found traces of the stolen knife, fingerprints, and a small metal token from the scene. Forensic labs later confirmed DNA that matched what was faintly found on the knife 2 months ago. The case, once airtight against the wrong man, had cracked wide open and was now rebuilding around the true culprit. Rex sat beside Harper, panting lightly, tail wagging with satisfaction. The dog had led the way with perfect precision. Every step had been deliberate. Every bark had been meaningful. Noah, clutching his stuffed bear, approached the dog carefully. "Thank you," he whispered. Rex nudged him gently with his nose as if to say, "We did it together." Harper smiled down at the boy, still in awe. "You know, kid," he said, "sometimes the smallest voice carries the loudest truth." Noah nodded, eyes wide. "He listened," he said simply. "The dog listened." And outside, the sun dipped behind the city skyline, casting long shadows across the courthouse steps. A toddler, a dog, and a man who couldn't hide had rewritten the story of what justice could look like. But even as the suspect was taken away, Harper knew this was only the beginning. Questions remained. Evidence had been tampered with. Lies had been told. Someone had tried to make the wrong man guilty. The real work, the investigation into who had set up the original defendant, was just beginning. And the dog, trained for obedience but guided by instinct, would be ready. Because instinct never lies. And neither did Noah. By the time the courtroom reconvened, chaos had transformed into a tense, focused energy. News vans lined the street outside. Reporters whispered into cameras, broadcasting snippets of a story that no one had ever seen before. A 3-year-old had shifted the course of justice, and a police dog had led the authorities to the real suspect. Inside, Judge Whitman reviewed his notes, eyes scanning the updated reports from Harper and the investigative team. The suspect apprehended in the alley was silent, sullen, cuffed, and pale, the weight of exposure finally pressing down on him. But Whitman knew the story was far from over. While the guilty man had been caught, the web behind the crime, the manipulations, the tampering, remained hidden in shadows. Officer Harper knelt beside Rex, now calm but still alert. "Let's go over what we've got," he muttered softly, more to the dog than anyone else. Rex's ears flicked. The K9 was ready. Harper had trained him to follow scent, pattern, and instinct, but the dog had a sixth sense that even Harper couldn't explain. It had led them straight to the man, bypassing months of false evidence. Detectives swarmed the evidence room, tracing every step of the jacket, the knife, and the manipulated files that had framed the original defendant. A pattern emerged. Someone had planted evidence, altered reports, and misled the first responding officers. It wasn't sloppy work, it was meticulous. Someone had intended to make an innocent man take the fall. The suspect sat silently, eyes darting nervously between officers. I didn't mean for it to go that far," he mumbled. The confession was slow, deliberate. Harper kept a steady hand on Rex's leash, letting the dog do what he did best: observe, react, and confirm instinctively. Noah sat quietly with his mother on a folding chair in the back. He had watched Rex locate the suspect, and he had repeated the details he remembered from the night of the crime. "He came back," Noah said softly, but the dog knew he was lying. His words, simple and direct, reminded Harper of the delicate balance between instinct and truth. Rex had confirmed the boy's account every step of the way. The combination of the toddler's observations and the K9's reactions created a chain of evidence no courtroom could ignore. Detectives brought the suspect into an interrogation room and Harper followed. Rex stayed just outside, ears pricked, scanning for any sign of deceit. The suspect's story started fragmented and defensive, but Harper noticed the dog's subtle reactions, the growl, the stiffening posture, whenever a lie was told or a detail changed. The suspect faltered. "I just wanted the money," he admitted finally, voice low and trembling. "It wasn't supposed to go that far, I didn't plan it." His eyes flicked nervously toward the door as if hoping the dog wouldn't notice. Rex did more than notice. The growl deepened, resonant and warning. Harper tightened his grip. "The dog knows everything you left out," he said calmly. "Start talking." Hours passed as the suspect unraveled the plot. He revealed accomplices, how the jacket had been planted, and even a corrupt chain of paperwork meant to convince investigators that the original defendant had committed the crime. Every lie was caught by Rex. Every hesitation confirmed the boy's recollections. It became clear that someone had exploited the innocence of a child and the authority of a K9 to obscure the truth, but they had underestimated the very tools they had manipulated. In the courtroom, Judge Whitman reviewed the emerging story as new evidence arrived. The first defendant, once facing conviction, had been released. The suspect apprehended in the alley would face charges, not only for the robbery and assault but also for evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. The prosecutor, visibly unsettled, had no choice but to concede. The judge's gavel came down not in anger but with deliberate authority. "Justice," Whitman intoned, "must be guided by truth, not assumptions. This trial has proven that even the smallest voices, when heard correctly, can protect the innocent and expose the guilty." Noah's mother wiped her tears looking at her son. "You were so brave," she whispered. Noah shrugged, a mix of pride and innocence in his eyes. "I just told the truth," he said. Harper crouched beside Rex. "And you, boy, led the way," he said, scratching behind the dog's ears. Rex nudged his hand gently, as if to acknowledge the partnership. The bond between the toddler and the dog had been subtle but powerful, a fusion of instinct, courage, and memory that neither humans nor law enforcement could replicate. Yet even as the immediate danger dissipated, Harper knew the investigation wasn't fully complete. The accomplices named by the suspect were still out there, likely hiding in shadows, waiting for the noise to settle. Tracking them would require the same combination of instinct and precision: Harper, Rex, and perhaps the quiet observance of those too small to be overlooked. The suspect was led away in handcuffs. Officers reviewed his confession, verified his accounts, and began building the case against his network. Every new detail corroborated the toddler's observations and Rex's reactions. Evidence that had once been manipulated now formed an airtight narrative pointing to the true culprits. As the day waned, Harper glanced down at Rex and whispered, "We're not done yet, but we're closer." Rex's ears twitched. He knew there was more to find, more to uncover. Justice, after all, wasn't a single moment, it was a process. And instinct, reinforced by truth, would guide it every step of the way. Noah, sitting quietly with his mother, tugged at Harper's sleeve. "Will the bad man go away?" he asked. Harper smiled gently. "He already did, kid, but we're making sure no one else can do what he did." The sun set over the courthouse, casting long shadows over the city. One child, one dog, and one determined officer had begun unraveling a web that might have trapped the innocent forever. But the real work, the full exposure of those behind the scheme, was only beginning. Harper knew instinctively that with Rex by his side, no lie would remain hidden for long. The night had fallen over the city, but the courthouse lights blazed like beacons. Inside, Harper, Rex, and a small task force pored over every scrap of evidence collected that day. Each file, each fingerprint, each faint trace of scent was being cross-referenced against surveillance footage, witness statements, and phone records. What had started as a simple robbery had blossomed into a complex conspiracy. Rex sat alert, muscles coiled, ears twitching at every sound. Harper could feel the tension radiating from him. The dog wasn't just a tracker anymore. He was a detective, a judge, a sentinel who refused to be fooled. Every time Harper moved to open a file, Rex nudged it with his nose as if guiding him toward the most critical clues. Noah had fallen asleep in his mother's lap on a nearby chair, tiny fingers curled around his bear. Harper glanced down at him, remembering the child's words from the courtroom earlier. The dog listened. That simple observation had ignited the unraveling of a criminal plot that no one had seen coming. Detectives had begun connecting dots they had ignored before. The original suspect, now cleared, had unknowingly been a pawn in a much larger game. Financial records revealed untraceable deposits. Surveillance footage showed shadowy figures meeting at odd hours near the crime scene, and communications logs pointed to multiple individuals coordinating movements, planning cover-ups, and manipulating evidence. The network was real, and it had teeth. Harper's phone buzzed. He picked it up, listening intently as a colleague reported a lead: a warehouse on the outskirts of the city where one of the accomplices had been spotted storing stolen property, including items linked to the original crime. "They're organized," Harper muttered, eyes narrowing. They knew how to manipulate evidence, avoid cameras, and control narratives, but they didn't count on Rex or Noah. Rex whined softly, packing beside Harper. He stopped abruptly, ears forward, nose to the ground. Harper bent down, recognizing the scent trail immediately. The dog was pointing toward the edge of the city grid, toward the hidden warehouse. Backup units were mobilized immediately. Officers armed and ready, Harper led the way, Rex at the forefront, every sense focused. As they approached the warehouse, The faint hum of machinery and occasional shuffle of feet could be heard through the walls. The suspect's accomplices were inside, unaware that their carefully constructed web of deceit was about to collapse. Noah's mother, understanding the gravity of the situation, whispered to her son, "Stay with me." But the boy, though exhausted, stirred at the sound of Rex's bark. Harper watched him and realized something. The child had a role even here. He had already observed patterns the adults could not see, recalled the faintest details, and had given the dog cues that guided the investigation. Inside the warehouse, shadows shifted. A man, tall and burly, stepped toward a crate, unaware of the approaching police. Harper signaled and the team moved quietly, strategically, while Rex's bark cut through the air. The man froze, instinctively reaching for a hidden weapon, but Harper's eyes were sharp. "Freeze, police." Rex lunged, but not recklessly, just enough to block any escape. Harper followed, catching the suspect in his path. The man struggled, but he was quickly subdued by backup units. Other accomplices attempted to flee through side exits, but Rex's keen senses and Harper's coordination allowed officers to intercept them efficiently. Every escape route was accounted for. Once inside, Harper noticed crates of stolen goods, documents, and personal belongings that had been planted to mislead investigators. Among them was a ledger with names, dates, and transaction amounts, clearly detailing the scope of the network. Harper realized that this small operation had extended far beyond the original robbery. Someone had carefully curated evidence to frame the innocent man and divert attention from the real criminals. As Harper read through the ledger, Rex barked again, pausing at one corner of the warehouse. Harper approached cautiously and found a small box, partially hidden beneath a stack of crates. Inside were fingerprints, photographs, and digital storage devices, direct proof of evidence tampering. The pieces finally fit together. The conspiracy wasn't just opportunistic, it was calculated, deliberate, and dangerous. Noah stirred awake at that moment, rubbing his eyes. He pointed toward Rex and whispered, "He knows them." Harper felt a chill run down his spine. The dog had indeed identified more than the man in the alley. His instincts had sensed the entire network. Every move, every hiding spot, every suspicious smell had been catalogued. And Noah's observations, combined with Rex's abilities, had illuminated the path that no human intuition alone could have traced. By the time the sun rose, the task force had arrested all the remaining accomplices. Evidence had been logged meticulously. The original defendant had been cleared, the suspect apprehended in the alley, and now the full network of collaborators was facing serious charges, including conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence. Harper finally allowed himself to breathe. He looked down at Rex, still alert, ears flicking at every sound. The dog had led the investigation flawlessly, guided by instincts no technology could replicate. Harper bent down and scratched behind his ears. "You did it, boy. You saved an innocent man." Noah's mother gathered her son, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You were amazing," she whispered to him. Noah shrugged, quiet but aware that something extraordinary had happened. "The dog listened," he said simply. Harper smiled. He knew the truth. Justice had been served not by power, money, or human pride, but by honesty, instinct, and a child's clarity. Yet, even as the arrests were made and the evidence secured, Harper understood the world had changed. Courts, investigations, and police procedures were now reminded of a simple truth. When the smallest voices are ignored, the innocent can suffer. When instincts are doubted, the guilty can escape. But when the two align, truth spoken, instincts trusted, justice becomes unstoppable. Outside the warehouse, Rex sat beside Harper and Noah, tail swishing lazily in the early morning light. For Harper, that sight was a quiet victory, but he knew the lesson would echo long after. Children observe, dogs remember, and together they could outpace even the most calculated criminals. And somewhere in the shadows of the city, the architects of the initial frame-up would remember that lesson too. If they were wise, they would never underestimate a child or a dog again. The story of Noah and Rex had reached its peak, but its ripple effects would shape the justice system forever. The courthouse was quiet, but the weight of what had happened hung heavy in the air. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows, casting long beams across polished wood floors that had witnessed decades of trials, but never one like this. A 3-year-old and a police dog had rewritten the course of justice, exposing a conspiracy that could have destroyed an innocent man's life. Judge Whitman presided over the final proceedings, his expression solemn. The courtroom was full, yet tension lingered, palpable, like static before a storm. Cameras, reporters, officers, and staff crowded the space, all drawn by the improbable story that had gripped the city. Everyone had come to witness history, and yet none could have predicted its full measure. Noah, sitting quietly on his mother's lap, held his stuffed bear tightly. The toddler's small hands were clean, pale, and innocent, but the impact of his words had been anything but. His tiny voice, filtered through instinct and memory, had unraveled a web of lies carefully spun by adults. Rex, alert and disciplined beside Officer Harper, had guided every step of the investigation. Together, boy and dog had spoken a truth that no evidence, no expert, and no protocol could replicate alone. The original defendant, now cleared, sat at the front of the courtroom with his attorney. Relief was visible in his face, but so was disbelief. He had spent weeks under suspicion for a crime he did not commit, yet here he was free. The man's voice trembled slightly as he addressed the court. "I owe my life to a dog and a child. Nothing else explains this. Nothing else would have saved me." The judge cleared his throat. "Let it be known," Whitman began, his voice steady, "that justice has been served today not only through evidence and testimony but through instinct, observation, and honesty." He paused, glancing toward Noah. "Sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest truths." The courtroom fell silent. Even the hardened reporters and seasoned officers seemed to catch their breath. A murmur of awe passed through the spectators. The suspect, apprehended in the alley, along with his accomplices, was escorted into the courtroom for final testimony. Every detail had been corroborated, every lie exposed. The network that had tried to manipulate the system had crumbled under scrutiny, unable to withstand the combination of instinct, observation, and courage. Harper crouched near Rex, whispering softly, "We did it, boy. We finally did it." Rex nudged Harper's hand gently with his nose, tail flicking. The bond between them had been tested, strengthened, and proven unbreakable. Harper glanced at Noah. The boy had observed more than anyone realized, pointing out details that adults had missed, guiding the dog in subtle ways only a child could. Noah's mother wiped away tears, glancing at her son. "You helped save someone's life," she said softly, "and you didn't even know it at first." Noah looked up at her, expression solemn, and whispered, "The dog listened." The judge continued, addressing the courtroom and the world beyond. "Let this case serve as a reminder. Procedures, evidence, and human judgment are important, but they are not infallible. Justice is a living process. It listens not only to the voices of those trained to speak, but also to those who speak plainly, honestly, and fearlessly, regardless of age." The prosecutor, once confident of a conviction, now sat humbled. The defense attorney exhaled slowly, relief etched into every line of his face. Even seasoned law enforcement officers exchanged glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The courtroom had witnessed a phenomenon that would be discussed for years. A toddler's words, amplified by a police dog's instincts, had overturned months of manipulated evidence. Outside, media crews captured footage of the real suspect being led away, handcuffed, face pale, and resigned. The city buzzed with the story, headlines declaring, "Toddler and police dog expose conspiracy. Innocent man freed by smallest witness. Justice listened to a child's voice." Yet inside the courthouse, amid the chaos of cameras and reporters, something quieter and far more profound had happened. Harper, Rex at his side, guided Noah and his mother toward the exit. The toddler walked slowly, tiny legs moving carefully but with purpose, clutching his bear. Rex matched his pace, ever watchful, ears flicking at the smallest sounds, tail wagging just enough to show satisfaction. Harper glanced at the pair, understanding fully what had unfolded. The child had reminded the adults that truth can come from unexpected sources, and the dog had reminded them that instinct can sometimes see what human eyes cannot. As they reached the courthouse steps, the sun fully broke through the clouds. Its light glinted off the polished city streets, illuminating a scene that felt almost cinematic. Reporters called out, cameras flashed, but Noah barely noticed. He was more interested in Rex, the dog who had understood him, believed him, and led the way. The boy knelt beside the dog, wrapping his small arms around the animal's neck. "Thank you for listening," he whispered. Rex nudged him gently, nuzzling the child's hair. Harper smiled quietly, witnessing a bond that was unspoken but unbreakable. Judge Whitman, observing from the courthouse window, allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. In his decades on the bench, he had seen countless trials, countless confessions, countless verdicts. But never had he seen justice delivered in this way, not just through procedure, evidence, and testimony, but through instinct, observation, and courage. A small plaque had been installed in the courthouse hallway weeks later, commemorating the extraordinary event. "Justice spoke when we were willing to listen." It was simple, unassuming, true. And every time a K-9 unit passed that hallway, handlers swore the dog slowed, sniffing the air with subtle recognition, as if remembering the day a 3-year-old's words and a police dog's instincts stopped a trial cold. Harper watched Noah and his mother disappear down the city street. He turned to Rex. "Ready for the next one?" he asked. Rex barked softly, tail wagging. They both knew instinct would guide them again, wherever justice required it. The city carried on. Life returned to routine, but a lesson lingered in every office, every precinct, every courthouse. The truth can be found in the smallest voice, the keenest nose, and the courage to notice both. And sometimes, that is all it takes to change everything.